She didn't win. The scoreboard was clear about that. 6-4. 6-0. 73 minutes. It was over. And yet, as she walked toward the exit, something extraordinary happened. 10,000 people rose to their feet. Not to celebrate a victory. Not to honor a champion. But to tell a young woman from the Philippines that she had given them something far more powerful than a trophy. This is the story of Alex Eala. And the day a loss became the loudest moment of her career. To understand what happened inside SoBi Stadium on that Tuesday afternoon in Toronto, you have to go back 2 weeks. Because this story doesn't begin with a defeat. It begins with a streak. 7 matches. 2 tournaments. 12 days of relentless, grinding, beautiful tennis. Alex Eala had arrived in Washington, D.C., still finding her footing among the elite. She left having won 5 consecutive matches, including a rain-delayed final that stretched across 2 exhausting days. 5 wins. 1 title. No time to breathe. Because Toronto was already waiting. The National Bank Open, one of the premier hard-court events on the WTA calendar. For most players, reaching the second week is a significant accomplishment. For Alex, it became something more. She arrived carrying the momentum of Washington and refused to let it go. 3 more victories followed, each one louder than the last, not just because of the tennis, which was exceptional, but because of the atmosphere building around her. The Filipino community in Toronto had discovered something. And once they did, everything changed. Carl Hale has spent nearly 2 decades running the Canadian Open. He has watched great players walk through those doors, seen sold-out nights and electric atmospheres. But he had never seen anything quite like this. A sold-out Wednesday night that early in the tournament, he described it as virtually unheard of. A phenomenon he couldn't quite explain, except to say that Alex Eala had unlocked something inside the Toronto Filipino community that no athlete had quite reached before. Because this wasn't just a fan base arriving to watch someone win. This was a community arriving to claim something. Philippine flags, red, white, blue, and yellow, transformed the interior of SoBi Stadium. Chants echoed across the stands. Custom shirts with her name moved through the aisles. Families who had never attended a professional tennis match were suddenly in the front rows, phones raised, voices loud. People like Warren Paul Katakaton, who helped organize a group of Filipino fans in Toronto around Alex's matches. The shirts they wore carried a simple message: rise, believe, inspire. 3 words that carried the weight of everything they had ever felt watching someone from home walk onto a world stage. The broadcasters took notice immediately. WTA Tour World Television commentator Mark Pai described the atmosphere during one of Alex's early victories as something extraordinary, not the language of routine tennis coverage, but of someone who understood that what they were witnessing had moved far beyond sport. And then the tournament did something it had never done before. It adapted. For the first time in its history, the National Bank Open began offering Filipino food at concessions. Chicken adobo. Lumpia Shanghai. The flavors of home, inside one of the most prestigious tennis venues in North America. That detail alone tells you everything about the scale of what was happening. Alex wasn't simply attracting Filipino fans. She was reshaping the event around her. But sports don't pause for atmosphere. And on that Tuesday afternoon, Alex Eala walked onto the court against Belinda Bencic, a player who had earned an Olympic gold medal in Tokyo, a former top 5 talent, someone who knew exactly how to win under pressure. For a while, it looked like it might be a real contest. Alex opened with confidence. She held serve to love, took a 1-0 lead in the first set, and gave the crowd in that packed stadium an immediate reason to cheer. Bencic answered. She leveled at 1-1, broke to go ahead 2-1, and then watched as Alex, refusing to wilt, broke right back. 2-2. 4-4. The first set was alive, competitive, and completely uncertain. But Bencic had found something that Alex couldn't solve. Sharp angles on her serve. Calculated pressure on her second shot. A relentless tactical approach that targeted the mechanics of Alex's left-handed game and never let up. At 5-4, the Swiss veteran closed the first set with the kind of precise serving that separates good players from great ones. 6-4. And then came the second set. If the first set was competitive, the second was something else entirely. Because what happened wasn't tactical. It wasn't a masterclass by Bensick, though she played well. It was the accumulation of 8 matches, 12 days, cross-border travel, and a body that had quietly been running toward empty for days. Bensick went ahead 2-0, then 5-0. The momentum that had powered Alex through 7 consecutive victories had simply run out. There was nothing dramatic in it. No breakdown. No visible moment when everything fell apart. Just exhaustion, the kind that settles in the legs and the mind simultaneously, the kind that no amount of willpower can completely overcome. 6-0. 73 minutes. Done. After the handshake, Alex returned to her bench. No raised fist. No triumphant exhale. No celebratory reaction of any kind. Just a young woman sitting quietly in the knowledge that her body had finally reached its limit, and that the 7-match winning streak, the longest of her career, was officially over. And then she started walking. Toward the exit. Away from the court. Toward the tunnel that would take her out of the stadium and into a short rest before Cincinnati and everything that waited beyond it. But Toronto wasn't finished. The flags started moving. First in one section, then another, then everywhere at once. The chants built from a murmur to something enormous. And then, in a moment that no one watching would ever quite forget, the crowd rose. 10,000 people stood up. For a player who had just lost 6-0 in the second set. Alex stopped. She turned back toward the stadium. The noise hit her like a wave. She looked up into the stands, at the flags, at the shirts, at the thousands of faces belonging to people who had come from across the Toronto Filipino community to be in that building with her. She waved. She blew kisses. She stood there for a few seconds longer than she needed to, taking one final look at a place that had treated her like she belonged there. Even Belinda Bensick, the winner, standing on the opposite side of the net, was moved by what she witnessed. She later acknowledged how special and unusual it was to compete in an atmosphere where almost the entire crowd had been cheering for her opponent, and she said so without resentment. Instead, she thanked the fans for the experience. That, in itself, speaks to how extraordinary the moment was. A short while later, Alex sat down for her post-match press conference. She didn't make excuses. She didn't lean on the obvious, the schedule, the travel, the back-to-back tournaments, the accumulated physical cost of 8 matches in 12 days. Any of those explanations would have been completely legitimate. No one in that room would have blinked. But that wasn't Alex. She acknowledged the loss hurt. Of course it did. She's a competitor. But then she did something that revealed exactly who she is. She gave credit to Bensick, plainly and directly. Bensick had put her in tough situations. Bensick had played really well. She hadn't been able to find a way out of the position the Swiss player had created. Simple. Honest. No deflection. And before anyone asked about the next tournament, she was already there in her mind. Cincinnati. Then New York. The schedule kept moving and she was moving with it. She said she wanted to take the lessons from those 2 weeks and apply them even better in Cincinnati and New York. Not the words of someone defeated in spirit. The words of someone who understood that a setback is only the end if you let it be. She left the press conference having earned $81,208 from her run to the round of 16 at the National Bank Open. She had also shared $15,800 with Venus Williams following their first-round doubles partnership earlier in the tournament. And then, in a moment that brought an almost jarring sense of humanity to the whole story, she mentioned something else. She needed a haircut. Her nails had grown out. She wanted to do a few normal things. Rest. Be a person for a day or two, not just a tennis player. Let the body recover and let the mind wander somewhere that wasn't a baseline or a tiebreak. After 8 matches in 12 days, that was her recovery plan. A haircut, a little time, and then back to work. Then came the question that changed the tone of the room. A reporter asked Alex about the overwhelming support she had received throughout her time in Toronto. And she paused. Because what followed wasn't a rehearsed answer. It wasn't the kind of gracious media-trained response that athletes learn to give. It was something more unguarded than that. She said that when she thinks about Filipino pride, when she thinks about what it means to represent her country, she sees herself as just a drop in the ocean. She does her part. She carries her flag onto the world's biggest stages, and she's proud of that. But standing in that stadium, Looking up at the people who had come from all corners of the Toronto Filipino community to cheer her on, she realized something. They were doing the same thing. They were representing. They were carrying their own version of that pride, simply by being present. By buying the tickets, making the shirts, bringing the flags, organizing the gatherings, cooking the food, and choosing, of all the places they could have been that week, to be inside Sobe Stadium for her. And that, she said, showed what kind of community Filipinos are. How deeply supportive they are of one another. How far that shared identity reaches, even across thousands of miles from home. She didn't sound like an athlete finishing an interview. She sounded like someone who had just been given something they didn't have words for yet. She described the atmosphere as incredible, difficult to explain to someone who hadn't been inside it. The flags. The love directed at her from 10,000 people who somehow didn't feel like strangers. Toronto, she said, had become a memory she would carry for a long time. For the people who had filled that stadium, Alex's journey carried a meaning that had nothing to do with rankings or prize money. It was about representation. When you grow up watching sports, you learn which players are yours, the ones who look like you, come from where you come from. And when one of those players steps onto a stage as large as the National Bank Open and wins on it, repeatedly, something shifts inside you. You stop being a spectator and you start feeling like a participant. That's what Alex Eala had given the Filipino community in Toronto. Not just good tennis. A feeling of presence. A sense of visibility. A reason to stand inside an international arena and say, someone from our community belongs here. And when she stopped on the way out of that stadium and turned back toward the crowd, that was the moment that crystallized everything. She didn't have to do that. She was exhausted. She had lost. The match was over. She could have walked straight into the tunnel. But she stopped. She turned. She looked at the people who had come for her, and she made sure they knew she saw them. That gesture, small, spontaneous, lasting only seconds, will live in the memory of everyone in that building far longer than any scoreline.